Hello, and welcome once again to the Broadcast Newswrap, your shorthand guide to the week's TV news stories brought to you by the Broadcast editorial team. I'm Broadcast Insight Editor Jesse Whittock, and this week I'll be joined by John Elmes, Broadcast International Guru. Banijay's takeover of Endemol Shine Group has completed this morning, creating the biggest indie company in the world, and we'll discuss the implications for the production community. Meanwhile, the organisers behind international TV conference Mipcom came out fighting. Coronavirus? What coronavirus? We'll be discussing those developments and have a wander through our mind palaces in what we've been watching on today's Broadcast News Wrap. So, breaking news this morning, as we were about to begin recording the pod, press release came through to confirm that Banijay's takeover of the Endemol Shine Group has completed. John, probably about the biggest merger that we could expect in our sector. What are your initial reactions?
My thoughts are, well, this is a very protracted takeover. You know, it was first announced back in October last year. Banijay secured the financing for the deal back in February with what they called really positive investor interest in the deal, and we're just waiting for a number of regulatory hurdles to clear before they completed. And on that, you know, there's been a lot of comments about whether it was going to happen and whether they might fall foul, but they've always been confident it was going to happen. So, you know, my initial reaction when they got the final clearance was, the thing that is expected to happen is happening. So, you know, it's a good deal for Banijay. They've long sought Endemol Shine. Long courted it. It's a storied history, and they'll be happy to have got it over the line now.
So the deal, we're estimating its value is around $1.7 billion pounds. In fact, about $2.2 billion. It's a very complicated ownership structure, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Looking at about around 200 production companies, we think, in that group, including the likes of Endemol Shine's Initial, Remarkable, Tiger Aspect, a whole number of others. From the Banijay side, you've got companies like RDF Media. So lots of companies with big brands. We're talking about 88,000 hours of assets, according to the press release. We've done a bit of work on that, you and I, John, a few months back, and clearly that catalogue is going to be a tricky thing to pull together. And Kathy Payne, once of Endemol Shine, is now in charge of Banijay rights and will have the job of pulling those things together. And that's meaning programs like Big Brother, Peaky Blinders, Black Mirror, MasterChef, Wallander, The Kardashians, The Wall, Temptation Island, all in one catalogue. Loads of other formats, lots of drama from the Endemol side. Let's dig into the programming a little bit here, John. For Banijay, the sense that I've always got from them is that the deal, whilst there are various reasons that Stéphane Corby, the owner of Banijay, has been interested and has desired to own Endemol Shine, sort of strategically, one of the big things for Banijay is they haven't ever really had a huge scripted division. They've created several scripted shows like Versailles, Wallander, the In-Betweeners, which they've only recently taken the rights back to. But effectively, the Endemol Shine scripted proposition, shows like Peaky Blinders, Black Mirror, is really a kind of the sort of golden egg, really, isn't it, for Banijay? It kind of massively expands their capabilities on that side.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like you mentioned, Jesse, that it brings together 200 entities. It's important to say that's across 22 countries, so it's truly a global company. I mean, the two set constituent entities were big in themselves. You know, they had presence all over the world, but now they've combined, they've really ramped up. And I think it's important to say that, reiterate that point that you made. This deal brings together, I think it's roughly around 30 labels in the UK alone, and a lot of those scripted entities are from the Endemol Shine side. You're right. You're absolutely right. I think scripted, given the precedence that scripted has in the industry anyway. We're constantly talking about being in the golden age of drama, and everyone wants premium scripted series on their catalogs, on their and brands on their slate. It's definitely been an important kind of strategy for Banijay's chief executive and now combined chief executive Marco Bassetti. I recall when I was in, I think it was MIP TV last year, my first MIP TV MIP event for broadcast. Marco Bassetti and Stefan Corby gave a keynote at MIP TV, and he said that the English language market, particularly in drama, was very attractive. Obviously, that's Banijay has lots of foreign language drama through its Scandinavian labels. If I just think about Yellowbird, that's got some great scripted properties. But obviously the English language market is important, and Peaky Blinders is a fantastic exemplar of a really popular English language drama show, which has got a big following. And Bassetti was talking about how going into the UK as one of a number of territories, I should caveat, but going into the UK, potentially looking for scripted opportunities was a big driver for him. It's definitely something that's been clearly on the minds of the managers. And now, taking ownership of some really quite premium scripted labels and scripted brands, they've got that capacity already. And who knows, maybe this will then lead to a boost to those labels in the country, as Bassetti looks to kind of follow through with that strategy of ramping up the scripted and Banijay.
Well, Corby and Bassetti's chase and desire to buy Endemol is something that people in the UK and international communities have been aware of for a long time. Just as a bit of a history lesson, I'm going to put on my tweed jacket and go into the weeds. Corby was at one point the president of Endemol France. And during the sort of mid 2000s, when Endemol as it was then, one of the various sort of complicated situations that it's been in over the years was emerging. And Corby had looked to actually try and buy the group out at that point. He was unsuccessful. There were people like John Elmes, Telefonica involved at the time, and he wasn't able to do that. And on the back of that, sort of the Banijay group was born. Effectively, he removed himself from the Endemol group, and a couple of years later launched Banijay. Over in Italy, the Zodiac Media Group had been created, or Zodiac Entertainment as it was at the time, by the D'Agostini family, and those two companies eventually merged, creating the Banijay Group as we see it now. And that was all about scale at that point in time. They were talking. I interviewed Bassetti probably. When did that deal happen? 6 years ago, I think. And even before then, he was talking about the need for Banijay to be a consolidator and not to be consolidated, even at that point. And they've really stuck to that strategy ever since. And it's clear that they've always wanted, and Bassetti also being an ex-Endemol exec, he was the president there about 8 years ago, and was the head of Endemol Italy. So both guys have a real affiliation with the Endemol Shine group, and clearly wanted to get those two assets together. So when people were talking about the debt pile at Endemol, and when people were talking about whether such a big group would necessarily work as a concept and structurally, I don't think that Bassetti or Corby have ever really seen it that way. I think that they'll be super happy this morning that they've got their hands on the asset. One thing we should add to the structure of the new company is that, as John, you mentioned, Bassetti will be the sort of group CEO of the combined entity. That inevitably means that Sophie Turner Laing, the Endemol Shine Group chief executive, is stepping down. According to the press release we have here, her final day is Friday, the 10th of July. So she's got a week today. So she's got some time to clear out her stuff and help the guys with a bit of transition before they get going. But I imagine plans are already underway to get those two companies together. So that's it's a huge change for the both UK and international markets, creating the biggest
Yeah, I mean,
non-studio
exactly.
company.
It's the biggest super indie. I mean, it brings together two super indies, which everyone just knows in the industry as Banijay and Endemol, big presence on the international market as individual entities, and bringing together the sheer size of that catalogue, as you mentioned, Jesse, that we've long discussed. So how does one manage that 88,000 hour catalogue? I'm sure, that has been long discussed, and, with Kathy Payne, known through her in Endemol Shine days, obviously has great knowledge of that catalogue, and she's been in post for about a month and a half now, I think, at Banijay. So she'll have got her feet under the table, and has a lot of close people around her from the Banijay side to steer. So I think it's got a good structure. It's clearly got a structure, a management structure that's been kind of readied over while they're waiting for this to clear. I mean, it might come as a surprise that Sophie Turner Laing only has a week, but to kind of finalise and leave. But then that would suggest that this has been in the planning for a while, and that all duck eggs are in a row. It is a major deal. I mean, the last big deal I think that we saw was the Disney takeover of 21st Century Fox, which closed officially last year. I mean, that was a big deal, and that was kind of taking over networks and stuff. This is in the production and distribution landscape. So for our day-to-day work, a really, really, really big deal, because it's all the companies that we work with on a day-to-day basis are now part of one group.
Well, that deal itself was the reason why the Walt Disney Company had ownership of Endemol Shine, or at least 50% of it, as it previously was owned by Rupert Murdoch's Fox Group. And so we're going to go slightly into the ownership structure now of the new company. So stick your financial hats on. So effectively, Disney and Apollo Global Management, which is an asset manager, had run the company as sort of 50-50 joint venture partners. And it was always a sense that Disney felt that the brands didn't quite fit together. I remember a source years back when the deal was first mooted that Disney would take over Fox. Someone said to me, someone within the Endemol group, that there is no way that Mickey Mouse will ever sell Big Brother. And that's sort of proven to be the case. I think Disney have never seen Endemol Shine as a core asset, and we're quite keen to offload it. So now we've got a management, an ownership structure, which is pretty complicated. So that was reasonably complicated. This one is arguably more so. So effectively, with a holding company that Stefan Corby controls, called the Love Group, owns 52% of the capital in the company. The D'Agostini Group and another company called Fimelac are part of that whole group of shareholders, along with an investment company owned by another French financier. So effectively, that group of shareholders have about 67% of the business, with the French media conglomerate Vivendi owning the other 33%. If we boil this down, John, effectively, Corby has tight control on what happens with the Banijay Endemol group.
Yeah, his companies have got the majority shareholding in the two entities. So LDH, the holding company, which his Love Group has, as you said, 52% of, that holding company has 67% ownership of the combined entity, Banijay and Endemol Shine, Bandemol, as the industry labelled it a few months back, and then Vivendi has the rest of it. Yeah, it's a complicated structure. It's gone from one complicated structure to another. You mentioned that Disney was unlikely, or a source of yours said that Disney was unlikely to see Big Brother as a brand, or some of the Endemol Shine brands as a core part. And we discussed, earlier this year whether what the massive attraction of Endemol Shine was. I remember when it was first mooted, the sale, that we were talking things like €4 billion deals. I mean, it's not insignificant, 2 billion, but it was touted. I think it was 5 billion was the first time it was touted as the price. So that's come down, and we wondered whether some of the labels or some of the brands within the group might need some charging up, some kind of reinvigorating. I mean, what's interesting to note is that before this completed, Big Brother, which is it's quite a it's a massive brand, but it has been, it's gone off the UK screens. It's had 7 reboots in throughout the world. It's come back to screens, and is also, the big ticket news is it's heading back to Holland for its spiritual home for the first time in over 10 years. So that brand, which I thought might need a little bit more invigoration, has already been invigorating prior. So maybe now with the combined strength, that the brands that they had that maybe needed a little bit of TLC are actually in a strong position to really get that boost, and we could see a Banijay and Endemol kind of real strength throughout the world with their properties on linear channels, platforms the world over. It's going to be interesting to see what shows are made by whom in the future, because quite a lot of them are surely going to have a Banijay and Endemol fingerprint on it.
I suppose that all kind of as a final point to this deal, I mean, which we'll obviously be covering in much more detail as we move forward, is the kind of, we've sort of touched upon who will be doing what within the group, and I think there'll be a lot of movement, certainly on that senior management level, and that kind of currently we've got Peter Langenberg running Banijay UK and the Banijay Group as COO. We've got the likes of Richard Johnston and Lucinda Hicks running the ESG side of things in the UK. So it'll be very interesting to see what the structure shakes out like there. I've got no sort of clear intel on that at the moment, but it's one to keep an eye on. And then as we go through the layers, it'll be interesting to see how they decide to kind of group the company and see who sort of rises to the top of what is a massive company with lots and lots of employees now. But we will see. But there you go. That's Banijay taking over Endemol Shine Group this morning. I mean, following on from that, what we were planning to talk about this morning at slightly more depth before the news broke, John, was the situation around Mipcom, which is an event that both Banijay and Endemol Shine Group are synonymous with. Do you want to take us through the latest developments there, and the context being that lots of people are very concerned that the event, which is held in Cannes every year, cannot happen due to the coronavirus. The organisers have sort of been very stoic in the fact that they believe it will happen. But what's the latest?
Yeah, so it was Lorraine Gouraud from Reed Meadem, the organisers of the MIP markets. She appeared on another podcast, the Telecast podcast yesterday, run by Boom PR's Justin Crosby, and she kind of gave an update on what the plan was, and she said it was all positive from Reed's side. The French government has confirmed that trade shows, major events will be officially validated, therefore allowed to take place starting from September the 1st. So that fits in with Mipcom's general timeframe of October, and that counteracts the French government's ruling when at the start of the coronavirus pandemic, which banned public gatherings of, in the first instance, it was 5,000, but it started gradually shrinking to, I think, 100 people by the end. So there was no hope that MIP TV was going to happen, because you get more 100 people just in organisers, let alone and exhibitors and delegates. So it from Reed Meadem's point of view, it's great news, so that a public gathering of over 5,000 people is allowed in the time frame that they have set up for Mipcom, and obviously harnessing that permission. Reed Meadem have been working hard, Gouraud said, to kind of come up with a plan that would allow for a really safe COVID-19 compliant exhibition and conference and market, and that includes they're having different entrance and exits. They're regulating traffic and flow through the exhibition hall. There'll be specially designed spaces in terms of the lounges and breakout places that exist in the Palais. Conferences will be run at 50% capacity. That's something that they've said. They'll be disinfecting every session. Cleaners will come in and disinfect the conference halls after delegates. Any any kind of queuing will involve social distancing, and they're ramping up their digital offering to kind of, I suppose, maximize the non-contact part of it, so that the people do feel that they can attend safely. But of course, they are acknowledging that this might not be enough for people. Yeah, I don't think Reed are not anticipating having a few of their delegates, their regular delegates, and buyers and distributors maybe not attending because of worries. I mean, this is all Lorraine Garod mentioned. That countries still might have travel restrictions, so it can't be possible from the countryside, let alone from Reed's side. So I think they're well aware of that, and it's obviously going to be a slightly smaller event because people will still be worried about flying. But from Reed's perspective, they've always maintained that they want to have the event, and they've now put in place measures to have a physical event with a digital offering as well.
So what we've understood, John, just from talking to people, and this will be the big issue for Reed Meadham and for the event, is some of the bigger groups. We won't name who those groups are, but you can sort of, the usual suspects. We've certainly heard from people within those companies really, showing extreme skepticism that the event can run and will be able to attract the sorts of buyers that those companies head to the market for. And as such, I think it's fair to say that there are a number of sort of very significant companies who either won't be at the event or are at least looking very intensely at the moment as to whether they will do so, and that is for a number of reasons. One, it could from the business side, it's attracting buyers, which is the reason why distributors go to these markets. Two is effectively the shutdown of sort of group gathering events removes a huge part of the sort of networking side of attending a market like this, which is people find very valuable. And then three, like you say, it's the practical things of, will my country allow me to travel? Will I need to quarantine when I come back for 2 weeks? What's the value of that offset by attending the market? So all the distribution companies have those questions to ask themselves about whether it's worth traveling to the market. If it happens and it goes ahead and it seems safe, I'm sure broadcast will be there to report back on what it's like on the ground. Like everyone else, I'm sure we're just waiting to see what happens next. But as of right now, Lorraine Garod is saying that it's going ahead and that it's all systems go, and that the French government agree. So we will see. We are going to have a quick squiz into your brain and what you've been watching this week. What's been on the John Elmes box? You were having probably a 3 or 4 day party after Liverpool managed to get over the line, get that title.
Yeah, that was quite fun. I've been watching a lot of football. That goes without saying. Actually, just by chance, the thing that I've been watching the most recently is football related. It's an Amazon original Spanish language drama called El Presidente, which focuses on the Chilean head of football, Hadaway. That's his surname, and it's about the FIFA-gate scandal, the $150 million corruption scandal that emerged back in 2015. And I interviewed the screenwriter Armando Bo, who won an Oscar for Birdman, and it's his first foray to TV, and he's done a really good. It's a dramedy. It's got some serious aspects and it's a serious story, but it's very funny. And I mean, it's immensely enjoyable. I've often enjoyed Spanish language and foreign language dramas, but this has got a comedic edge, and it's really, really entertaining. So I thoroughly recommend that.
Is it better than that Tim Roth FIFA film that came out a few years back, where Tim Roth played the notorious FIFA president or ex-FIFA president Sepp Blatter in one of the world's more weird instances of casting, where Hollywood gets it all wrong? I'm assuming it's slightly better than that.
It is. I mean, it's got some quite strong talent attached to it. I mean, Armando Bow is the writer, and is is obviously a testament to that. No, it is better. It is very good. It's a very good concept. It's basically narrated by the late Argentinian president Grondona, Julio Grondona, and he narrates it from wherever he's gone to. It could be a heaven. It's an ethereal place, but he narrates it from above, and he looks down on the participants and the players of which he is one. And I really like its shtick. It's quite funny. It's obviously about a football event which I've read about consistently. And it's just really well made and very cinematically shot. It's got a very cinematic edge, so it doesn't feel like just your normal scripted drama. So I thoroughly recommend it. Yeah. Cool. How about you, Jesse? What have you been watching?
So I'm still pushing through all 6 seasons of Bosch, which is my Amazon detective drama. Enjoying that. I think the plot lines are getting increasingly loose, and some of the liberties being taken are getting quite hard to stick with. But I'm still enjoying it. But I'm like everyone else. I've been really enjoying I May Destroy You. I think it's an absolutely extraordinary piece of television. Michaela Cole's just smashed it out of the park. Somehow she's made what is a really grim subject matter of date rape and assault and victimization into something at times quite comedic and quite funny. She's got that tone that she's able to apply to really serious subject matter and make it accessible in the sense of making you understand the motivations of what a victim might feel after something awful happens, and is quite exceptional. And there's also this really brilliant sort of film noir element to it, where she's piecing together what's happened to her, and it's just a really, really clever and really well put together and well acted piece of television. It's really beautifully shot as well. There's an episode in Italy which is really lovely to see, really lovely to watch. So yeah, that's I'm not going to be the only person to say it's one of the best things you'll see this year, but it is one of the best things you'll see this year. And on that note, that is it for this week's Broadcast News Wrap. So John, thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you again next week.
An absolute pleasure, Jesse. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Broadcast News Wrap. Your continued support and feedback doesn't go unnoticed at Broadcast Towers. Please make sure to follow us on @BroadcastNow on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and check in to broadcastnow.co.uk for the latest breaking news and analysis, in-depth features, and cutting-edge comment. I'm Broadcast Insight Editor Jesse Whittock, and I've been speaking to Broadcast International Editor John Elmes. You can find this episode and all previous episodes on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or via our website. And don't forget to tune in next time for more news and analysis from the heart of Teleland.